welcome all to the second episode of the Workplace Violence Mitigation Podcast. Today we've got with us a good friend of mine, actually. I've known Chris Harrington for years. He is the owner of HBT Security and the HBT Training Academy, which trains security guards. And we're going to talk about the security component as it uh, kind of meshes or becomes part of the workplace violence mitigation process. So, Chris, thank you very much. I appreciate you being here today. Can you kind of tell our listeners what your background is and how you got into what you're doing currently?
Yeah, thank you, Dan, for inviting me to the podcast. As usual, like you said, we talk all the time, and I look forward to speaking with you about a lot of things that happen. But a little bit about myself. I'm a little modest when it comes to speaking about me, but I just retired from Illinois Department of Corrections. I started off as a correctional officer at Stateville, was there for 16 years. In my tenure at Stateville, I worked in the investigation unit with the special ops unit. I worked with different units with that. I was an instructor for OC. I was an instructor at the academy several different times. Then I eventually promoted to the street with parole. And with parole, I worked in different facets also. I worked and with different units there. I was a part of apprehension as far as bringing fugitives back from different states, taking them out from different states, whether it be flying or driving, and executing warrants.
Very good. So, Chris, how did you go? I guess the transition from what you had made a career on. How long were you with state of Illinois?
26 plus years.
Okay. So it's kind of for most of us, myself included, it's kind of a natural progression to get into the security realm. But you've taken it a step further and gone into the actual training of these guards. So not just providing security, physical security, but actual training of the guards. What can you tell us about how that has developed in recent years?
Well, my partner and I, when we started the business, we started in 2013 as strictly a training company. And my partner and I both, we love training, and we're advocate of training. So as time went on, we just did a little bit more training, and we evolved into a fully fledged security company. Not knocking any security companies out there, but we just saw the need for highly trained security personnel out there, and we saw the need that there is a lack of not just training but leadership out there when it comes to security. And security, everyone thinks they know how to do it until they're faced with a situation that they've never been trained on. And then all of a sudden, now the insurance comes about because they just go off of what they think they should do. And a lot of times it's the wrong thing, or they don't do anything. So with my partner and I, we said we need to step up the training. So when it comes to our personnel, and when we train students from other companies or people that just take our classes, from what we get from a lot of students is, man, I've never been trained on this level. I've never seen this level of training. I've never been trained in a high stress situation. I've never been trained to get to my firearm. What happens? I've never been trained on hand to hand. You know, what happens before the firearm? What happens between the presence and firearm? You know, so it's a lack of training out there, and it's not the security personnel's fault. A lot of times, it's not available for them, or if it is available, it's so much that they have to pay that it deters them. So what we've done is we try to gear it to where people can afford it. And if they have a problem with affording the small amount that we have, sometimes we work with it, as far as paying a little bit here, paying a little bit there, because we understand training is vital.
Got it. So there's never, unfortunately, there's never a loss of or a lack of new things in the news that we can discuss as it relates to workplace violence mitigation. And in the brief time between episode one and episode two here, we've had several major incidents. The school shooting in Minnesota, obviously the Charlie Kirk assassination, and the even the assassination of the CEO in from UHC in New York, several months ago, which is still an ongoing issue. Chris, what do you equate this huge uptick in violence? Not some of the things have been around for a while. We've been constantly dealing with the school shootings and whatnot, but all of a sudden these targeted attacks against specific individuals, either high profile politicians or celebrities or CEOs or C-suite individuals. What do you equate this uptick in violence to?
Well, in my era, of course, I'm 54, but when I was growing up, we didn't have social media. So everything was word of mouth. You had to read it. Of course, you had the news, and then you know it was people actually conversating. Nowadays, you have social media. Everything is accessible right now, and with that, I believe that a lot of people go to social media for facts, and whether it be true or not, they believe it. And I've heard several people, including myself, uh, talk. I've talked with several guys where we've talked about the hatred that people have heard and the hatred that's spilled out over social media. And it starts at the top and it trickles down to the bottom. But by the time it gets to the bottom, it's almost ramped up, and it's the reverse effect. It starts off at the top and it's light. By the time it gets to the bottom, it's so heavy that people have no outlets. They don't know what to do. And before you know it, people is the analogy I've used plenty of times. People are walking around with their fist in the air, like ready to fight, but smiling at you and saying good morning. And with that being said, I think at some point people get tired.
Yeah, it seems as though we've reached a consistent boiling point, and it's just, you know, what is the one thing that's going to set these individuals off? And some of these things are, yeah, and I'm not looking to make this discussion political in any way, shape, or form, because we can talk about these things and the
All day.
exposure and the risk without going there, right? But you look at some of these things. When I watched the whole thing with the Charlie Kirk assassination, I would have put money that that was a professional hit, just the way that the whole thing was orchestrated and it went down. And as it turns out, or as it appears to be, it was just some guy with his grandfather's rifle that got off the shot of a lifetime and destroyed how many lives in the process. But I agree with you that it's being fed. This fire is being fueled horrendously by the social media. The problem is that we can't seem to get away from it, I should say. It's constantly in our face. We're all guilty of it, scrolling through. But at least you and I, when we look at things, we're like, I have to do a little bit more research if I'm going to believe that what I'm seeing on this social media post is actual fact, as opposed to taking it on its face because a lot of what we're fed through the social media outlets, let's face it, it's bullshit,
Right.
right?
It
So,
is.
but for those that are more easily influenced or are not willing to take the time to research and find out for themselves and just kind of open their eyes a little bit, this is what we end up with. So it seems as though you're telling me that this has really changed the whole landscape of the security industry. You know, it's not just having a guard at the front door anymore that has, you know, a pair of high top gym shoes and a black t-shirt that says security. These are the requirements are that they are going to be much more highly trained individuals. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and like you said, Dan, to piggyback off of that, we just had a training class with a few students, and we told them we're gonna deliberately put you in stress situations. The best place to have the worst training is in an environment that's conducive to everybody. So this is where you want to fail. This is where you want to see it. This is where you want to have that fight or flight. So if it ever happens, God forbid it happens when you're working or when you're with your family or what have you, your mind actually kicks in and says, we've done this before. We've actually fought through this before. This is what we need to do. Because, just like and we've talked about plenty of times, if anything happens, whether you're with your family by yourself or in a security or executive protection situation, you go into fight or flight and you always go to your highest level of training. And if you never had it, then you never have anything to go to. And we have more religious entities contacting us more than not about security assessments, what to do. We just had one today call us and said, can we schedule? So people are seeing that we need security assessments. We need trained security personnel there. But just like we've talked about in the law enforcement field, and we've all talked about it, unfortunately, a lot of people think it's never going to happen to me. This is what I would do. And that happens elsewhere. That happens in this area. So I don't go to those areas or whatever. But right now, those bad areas are everywhere.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we encounter this a lot of times with our active shooter response training and just the workplace violence mitigation planning and the institute and all that, where people, you know, they get this in their head that I think unfortunately what's happening is it's becoming so prevalent. It's happening so much. People are getting numb to it. You know, remember at one point there was a shock factor when you would hear about a school shooting or you know, just today Dallas had a sniper open fire on an ICE facility in Dallas and several individuals were killed there. And it's almost like okay, it happened again. It's another one where the shock factor seems to be getting removed, which is a very dangerous place for society to be, right? And it's not just about saving lives, but it's about saving livelihoods. If you if your venue is the unfortunate host of one of these events, even if everybody gets out unscathed, in other words, not physically injured, your liability for that event is horrible as the owner of the venue or as the company that hosted the event. So I guess it doesn't really surprise me that you're getting more contact from these entities. Actually, I'm pleasantly surprised that they're calling you saying, "Hey, we need some information. We need to address this." At least they're waking up and they're recognizing it. Why do you suppose that they're turning to you? Because the solution has always been, well, if something goes awry, we're going to call the police and they're going to swoop in and save us, or they're going to tell us what to do. It seems less and less that people are relying on the police and coming to their own private solutions for these things. Why do you suppose that is?
Well, just like we know and we learned in law enforcement, Majority of us, it should be all of us, but majority of us carry tourniquets on our vest, in our vehicles, on our body, on our person somewhere. And what is the the rule of thumb for a tourniquet? It's not for anybody else, it's for you. So I think that when it comes to these religious entities, they're using that tourniquet method. We need to do something for us, not for anyone else. Because what I've heard and the conversations from pastors, elders, from deacons, synagogues, different places, which is good because they're acknowledging that there's a problem. But what I'm hearing is I'm responsible for my congregation, and I'm not waiting for somebody to come in to save us. So I need to know something now. I need to get the information right now. I need you to train all of my people. I want you guys to come out and do a security assessment of the soft points of the areas. Do we need cameras? Do we not need cameras? How many people do we need? And how to better be in a position to win. And one thing that we tell everyone, including students, is everyone needs to practice situational awareness in your everyday life. Situational awareness will actually help you win the fight before the fight happens. Because what people fail to realize is when these criminals are looking for, or should say predators, when they're looking for victims, if you look like a victim, then you would be victimized. But at the same time, when it's just like the lion that's looking for out of the herd, looking for that weak, that weak entity. Once that weak entity starts to turn around and face the lion backs down. But they have to know what that looks like.
I guess if I had to give a one-word response to everything that you just said, it would be finally. For years, we have been preaching this situational awareness and the thought that you've got to get away from the easy button and nobody is coming to save you. Listen, law enforcement is there's a lot of reasons why it is not what it used to be. All right. But for purposes of this discussion and for toning it down a little bit, let's just say that they are pushed way beyond their capabilities with the resources that they have, and the resources that they have continue to dwindle. And that is not just funding, but manpower and recruitment and retention issues, and how difficult it is just in Illinois with new laws that have just passed to onboard new police officers, whether they're just starting their career or they're lateraling in from a different agency. The things that law enforcement used to do, they're just not doing it anymore. So, but does that mean that the need to have these things done goes away? Absolutely not. And you are 100% correct when you say that people need to recognize and realize that you are responsible for your people. If something happens in your facility and you didn't take measures ahead of time to mitigate those things out, it is your liability. You are responsible, and ultimately you have to live with it. I mean, who wants to go home with that at the end of the day and know, because of my failures to implement these things, I now have 4 employees that have been here for 20, 30 years that are all gone. I've got to call their families, excuse me, and tell them that they're not coming home because I screwed this up or we didn't do as a company what we were supposed to do. So the fact that they are actually recognizing this and reaching out to you is encouraging. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, because we've talked about this before, what you're going to see, you've already seen it in California with SB 553, which is a law that passed there about a year ago, and you're starting to see it kind of move across the United States and hit these other states where workplace violence mitigation planning and security planning and having all of those things in place is mandated by law. They don't have a choice, you know. So as these things start to be implemented legislatively, it's going to really, really backlog the response that our industry can provide to them, which is why I tell people all the time, get in front of this now. Do not wait for a mandate to force you to do it, because once the mandate comes into play, everybody's going to have to do it. And getting on the schedule is going to be really, really tough.
Right.
So don't wait for this.
Well, Dan, just going off what you said, my partner and I, we actually put this curriculum together. It's called Security First Responder Active Threat Training. I am a certified law enforcement instructor through Homeland Security. I'm also a certified law enforcement instructor through NRA. So, with the training that we would do if we go to a police department and train them, we just kind of watered that down a little bit to gear towards civilian security. So, we've already taken our first two classes through. And as we go through the classes, we always check on the students and ask them, how are you feeling? What do you think? Um, Give us feedback. Everyone that's talked, besides being excited about the training because they've never been trained on that level, they're always saying, I've never seen anything like this. My heart rate was up when we had to go through the door, when we had to go through in a dark room. I didn't know what to expect. Low light training, when we had to go in and I actually mitigate and isolate the threat. We didn't know what we was going to do. So in training, we tell everyone, fight through it. You may be scared. It may be intimidating, but you're in a safe space. But fight through that right now. So if it does happen when you're working security somewhere, you've already fought through it one time and it's not foreign to you. And in that training, we tell them, we're not teaching you to be the police, but um, as first responders labeled, your security is never labeled first responders. But if it happens where you there right then and there, you are the first responder. I don't care what
Absolutely.
anybody tells you. You're the first responder. And we teach them how to use dispatch to identify themselves, because the police are coming, but you may come across people that are shot. You may come across women, children that are shot. You may come across blood or what have you. You have to know how your body is going to deal with that. And you have to fight the urge to help them. That's not your place. Your place is to isolate and eliminate. Somebody's coming to help them, but and I know people in class that we've had scenarios where we told them, no, walk past that child, walk past that woman that's hurt, you know, and psychologically it messed them up. But they've seen it. They had to work through it. And then when we take them through again, they were able to walk past that, because we said someone's coming behind you that's going to tend to that. But right now, if you stop to tend to that, then that person that's the threat, they're still killing, stabbing, or shooting people.
Right. Yeah. It's
So
it's very, very difficult to override the sense of um, you're there to help people. I mean, ultimately that's your purpose, right? And when you've got somebody who's injured lying in front of you, you naturally want to go to that individual and try to help them. But you need to remember that, just like you said, there's going to be more victims just like this one if you don't do your job and achieve your mission, which is to isolate the offender and neutralize the threat wherever that threat is. And you're right. It's time for the time has come. The time has past come for security folks, security agents, to be considered, as long as they are on the scene, as first responders, right? And we've security and police over the decades have also always had this division between them, right? The police look at security as a lesser element, and when the police arrive on the scene, it's like, okay, we're here, we got this. And truth of the matter is, it should be more like, we're here to help you so we can
Exactly.
all get through this, right?
Exactly.
So to step up the training to that level so that law enforcement and professional security agents can work more as a team, a cohesive team, as opposed to handing off the baton in a relay race and letting somebody else run off with it while you step back into the background. Those days are gone. There's just not enough. There's not enough trained individuals that are trained as first responders to fill those gaps. So we need to take advantage of every resource that we have,
Well,
right?
Dan, and here's another thing in the training that we do. We actually train the students to to deal with dispatch, how to deal with dispatch, and in real world terms, not 10 codes or not whatever, but real world terms. Um, when you call dispatch, identify who you are, where you at, what's going on, how many people are there on your level, how many possible active threats you have and whatever. And then we teach them how to engage with the police, because one thing that we tell students is, while you're looking for the active threat, when your help comes in, guess what? They're looking for the active threat also. But what you don't want to do is have a muzzle that's friendly pointing at you, and you don't want to point a muzzle at the friendly.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
so you need to know what that looks like
Yeah.
and how
Yeah.
that works.
Right. You don't want to confuse each other as being the active threat that you're trying to eliminate.
Right.
Right. So and it's through training and communication. I mean, every time when I was on the job and we used to do these exercises and these training events, the thing that you could count on more than anything was anything that went awry during the training could be traced back to a failure in communication. Always, always. Well, why didn't you do this? I put it out on the radio. Well, I'm not on that channel. Okay, well, that's a problem. We either need to get you on a channel or get you another radio so we can monitor each other, because you don't know what I'm doing and I don't know what you're doing, and we're working against each other. So, Chris, let me ask you, and again, I can't. I'm not asking you to predict the future, but I'm asking you to predict the future. Um, what are we looking at? Because I deal with law enforcement guys that are still on the job all day, every day. We do backgrounds for police and fire departments more than anybody else in the Midwest. I mean, we're the largest background company in the Midwest for police and fire backgrounds. Um, and the frustration that I'm seeing from these agency heads is almost sickening, frankly, and they just don't know what to do. I mean, they're not afforded enough money to pay new recruits to get their attention and get them interested in the job, and the job is just kind of a mess in the last couple of years. So, how do you see, as we move forward, the security industry kind of fill in those holes, or do you? Or do you think that law enforcement is ultimately going to get their stuff together and we're going to be able to fix this?
Well, good question. Uh, that's a huge that's a huge question to ask. But what I really think is, the time that policing was top and security was just low level, that time is gone. Now security is heavy, and policing is kind of, the bottom, so um what I think is, police departments at some point, some way, somehow, are going to have to deal with security somewhere. They're gonna have to get with companies that they trust. Once again, um, I don't talk about any other company because I don't want anyone talking about us. But with HBT Security Group, our high level of training, we actually push that. We pay our people to come in to train because with the department, when we had training, when we had cycle training, what they do, they paid us, right? So we pay our people to come in to train. And we don't just take them to the range, but we get them in the classroom. We go over different laws with them. We do some PowerPoint with them. We do some close quarter stuff with them. We do some communication work with them, and we put them in situations. And I think if law enforcement really wants to be effective, they're going to have to network with security companies because, as you said, as we know, we've talked about it several times. Um, Police departments are low right now. There's not too many people that want to be the police. I remember growing up and you ask people, kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? They said doctor, firefighter, or police officer. Now, I don't know. These new guys with the police departments that got 5 or 6 years in, hell, I've had guys tell me when I was on the street before I retired last year, in different districts, they said, "Man, by trade, I'm a plumber. I'm an electrician. I don't need this, so I'm done." You know, so when it comes down to it, and it boils down to it, I think police departments are going to have to suck up the pride and network with security companies somehow, some way.
Yeah.
But in that, they're gonna have to demand that the training is higher.
Yeah.
It's a higher
Yeah.
level training.
Maybe some cross training between law enforcement and security at some point in the future would be in order for law enforcement to see, look, this is not, a high school dropout sitting at the door with a security shirt on. These people are trained. A lot of the guys and ladies that you have on your staff, I know, are former law enforcement,
Right,
former military. I mean, these people have backgrounds in what they're doing. They're good at what they're doing, and it's not about showing them the respect that they deserve, although that is important. It's really about knowing, understanding, and trusting that they know what they're doing. If I'm the first responding officer at a scene and I encounter two security officers, I should look at those two security officers as my backup, not something that's in my way, right? They're my first source of really good professional information, not somebody that I need to push away and say, look, I got this. It doesn't work that way. So I think that they need to start. You're right. They need to start working together in a supplemental fashion, as opposed to security is here, law enforcement is here. Security is fine until law enforcement gets there, and then they take over. Those days are gone.
right.
It's just
Now,
not a luxury we have anymore.
Dan, you and I have talked about this before. Even you, myself, and Les talked about this. Um, Me personally, I think if police departments just sat down with security companies and come up with a list of requirements, that could be an incentive to the security personnel to actually say, wow, so I don't have to have all this schooling. I don't have to go and pay all this money as a security personnel. I can actually earn credits, or I can actually earn a possibility of being a police officer at some point, if they had certain levels of training, if they put in certain amount of hours, and what have you. You know, if police departments actually did that, I think that their recruitment would just increase because right now, you know as well as I do, when it comes to the civilian aspect of security, when you tell them to pay for their training, a lot of times they don't see the necessity of it. They don't understand the necessity of it. They don't understand the different levels of it. So with that being said, um, that's why we say, okay, with like this curriculum, we only charge $200 for 2 days of the training, you know, and that's really just to pay for the venue,
Right.
and pay for different things we have going on. But it's the business really isn't making money. We just want people to be able to afford the training so they can get it, you know. And if police departments actually sat down with the leaders of these security companies and mandate, if you want to work with us, this is the stipulation, this is the level of training that your people have to have, and this is um, what you have to maintain to show us or whatever, then I think that'll work out.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but it would seem to me that when you're talking about the expectation of society and expectation of private clients, as the expectations from law enforcement start to diminish, the expectations of private security begin to raise.
Yes.
um, and not necessarily in an equal proportion, right? I tell people all the time, if you are in your place of business and you are taking gunfire, call the police. Outside of that, the police is probably not the first call you should be making. It should be to your pre-vetted security resource. So you need to have these things in place in a plan ahead of time, which is what part of workplace violence mitigation, which is how we partnered up, right? When we have somebody that says, "Well, what do I do about physical security if I need it?" Well, you call HBT. Here's their number. Get a hold of Chris. Get a hold of Les. And tell them I sent you over there, and they will take care of you. It's a huge component of mitigating the process. But the time to start looking for that, it's not a 911 dispatch. The
Right.
time to start looking for that is when you don't need it,
Right.
because when you need it right now,
Right.
right? So yeah, it's been an interesting shift, I will say. And the expectations from society and the clients on the security resources that they hire seems to have increased tremendously.
Right. And um, I've networked with a lot of security companies, and I've talked to a lot of personnel with different security companies, and just period. And the consensus with the security personnel is one, they've never had training outside of the basic training. Two is when I've asked, what do you do if this happens? A lot of times they say, well, I don't know. I don't know. And I've heard people actually say, well, I was told if anything happens, just walk away from it. Don't pull your firearm. Don't do this. Don't do that. The list of don'ts are is so long that I just ask them, what can you do? And they really don't know. And that's one thing that HBT wants to try to eliminate as much as possible. We want to make a list of what can you do? What can you pull from your tool belt to do the job? And the majority of the time, that's not pulling a firearm. That's that's
Correct.
that's not going hands on. Sometimes it's presence. Sometimes it's de-escalation. Sometimes it's situational awareness. And a majority of the times it's communication
Correct.
or the lack thereof of communication. So that's why we're so adamant about working with people, getting them in class, teaching them, going through scenarios, because um, ultimately, and once again, it's not the fault of the security personnel, but it's the fault of the company not preparing them for the what ifs, and their preparation to of for the security personnel is don't do. But the heads of the security company that's um, dealing with the contracts, they're in an office somewhere where the security personnel is right there now dealing with a situation that they've never been trained or told what to do. So,
Yeah,
with
and
that being said, we all have insurance, but we all don't wanna use the insurance. We have life insurance, car insurance, home insurance, whatever, but nobody wants to use it.
well, and you got to remind people too that it's not just what can you do, it's what are you expected to do? What
Right,
must you do? What is your
right,
purpose here, right? Because you can
exactly,
get yourself liability wise as a security agent, or as I've heard you guys refer to it before, a private policing agent, um, for not acting as much as, overstepping, right?
exactly,
So your purpose there is to provide security. If you stand there and do nothing or don't know what to do, you're just as liable as if you did too much. So it's a very difficult position for the agent to be in, and it's a very difficult position for law enforcement to be in, when they're on the street as well. And the only way to overcome it and understand the whole thing, the whole game is through training, right? Through training and experience. So I know that when we do these podcasts, Chris, that we generally do them in a setting like this where, I'm in my office, you're in your office, and we're having some conversation. But I think what would be fantastic in the future is if we can get some video of some of the training that you guys do and some of the scenarios that you run, and then put those on air here and critique them together so that the listeners can see what this level of training actually looks like. So maybe that's something that we can plan for,
absolutely,
in the future, to
right.
give them that exposure. So as we try to kind of wrap this up, without compromising any industry secrets. I always like to give the people that are listening to the show some kind of solid takeaway for their own personal safety, to kind of end this on. So, do you have any tidbits that you can throw out that might help them to just improve their situational awareness, or any nugget of advice, or anything that you're seeing out there or have been, um, seeing that you've verified that is a new threat, that people are seeing out on the street today, that we can share with them?
Yeah, we're in a rush, society. Slow down a little bit. And I'm not saying drive. I'm talking about when you get ready to step out your house, just slow down a little bit, and pay attention to what's going on. You'll be surprised of how many cars are in front of your house. Who's paying attention to you when you're at the pump? Instead of, looking at the idiot box that says, "Hey, we got 2 hot dogs and a soda for $3." You
Yeah,
know, hey, look around. Look around you. See who's paying attention to you, who's actually, um, driving around or what have you, because it's the little things that we don't understand. If I'm trying to victimize you and I see that you're paying attention, once again, uh, I'm the lion and I see you as the injured prey, or I see you as the prey. If you turn around and face me, and I'm not saying eye to eye, I'm saying just give me eye contact and acknowledge that you see me. Sometimes I find another victim. Also,
absolutely.
with these cell phones, and I understand it, I really do. But if you can, when you're walking, try to keep your head up. If you can, keep that cell phone off your ear when you're walking because you can't hear anything, you know? So it's just little things that we can do to improve our situational awareness. It's really not drastic and it's not major. And with stuff like that, believe me, I practice this every day. And even though I open the door for my wife all the time, and I've always done that, when my wife and I go out sometimes, I just imagine her being the client and I'm the executive protection detail on her. So when I open the door, I make sure I'm looking around. I make sure there's no obstruction. And when I close the door, I pay attention before I get in. Soon as I get in the car, I'll lock the door and I'm scanning my mirrors. Now, my wife just thinks, I have a great husband, but I'm using her to train also, you know? So, so use what you have, use your family to train and your friends. They don't have to know, just, just do it.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely. And they benefit from it, right? They
Right.
benefit from the second set of eyes. So, Chris, thank you very much for coming on today. It's been a great conversation. We
Dan,
will
I
have
appreciate
more.
it. Thank you for the time and thank you for the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to bid you folks farewell for the day. If the information that we provided to you was of interest, by all means, like us, share us. We want to get the word out any way that we can. We do not have sponsors for this, so this is something that we do just to get our information out in front of you. Again, Chris, if people want to get a hold of HBT, where can they find you on the web?
If they want to look us up, they can look us up at hbtsecuritygroup.com, www.hbtsecuritygroup.com, or call us at 773-485-7223.
All right. Chris and Les are from HBT are a great resource. If you folks uh, have questions for them, by all means, reach out and let them know that you heard about them here on the WVM podcast. Um, watch for episode 3 coming up in about 2 weeks. See you soon.
Thanks, Dan. Have a good one.